The ruins of Kestral Station still smoldered when Captain Jace Korr arrived with what was left of his unit. Steel girders sagged like broken bones, sparks rained from torn conduits, and bodies, human and alien, lay scattered in the debris. The air reeked of ozone, fuel, and blood. The ambush had been clean, precise, and devastating. The XYRH Dominion hadn't sent an army. They hadn't needed one. They sent overwhelming numbers, surrounding the human garrison until every escape route was cut. Jace had held the line for 2 days before reinforcements pulled them out. Outnumbered 100 to 1, the defenders had still managed to gut the Dominion's vanguard. Jace's jaw clenched as he surveyed the wreckage. The pain in his leg, still burning from shrapnel, barely registered. What mattered was the silence. Humanity's outpost was gone, but so was the Dominion's certainty. They had won, but at a cost that made their commanders furious. Mara Aaron, his second-in-command, approached. Her armor was scorched, one shoulder plate half melted. Her eyes, however, carried the same defiance that had held the barricades when ammo ran dry. They called an orbital bombardment on their own position just to stop us. That's not strategy, that's desperation. Jace turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Good. Let them know what it costs to corner humans. Hours later, back aboard the carrier Resolute, the debrief began. The war room buzzed with tension as holomaps projected the scale of the Dominion advance. Entire sectors glowed red where human colonies had been swallowed. Earth itself sat in the center, a wounded heart surrounded by predators. Admiral Saran leaned heavily against the table. His face was pale, his voice weary. We're stretched thin. The Dominion's numbers are endless. Every projection ends with collapse in under 6 months. The silence that followed was suffocating. Officers shifted uneasily, but no one spoke. Jace finally broke it. His tone was iron. Then your projections are wrong. Because you're forgetting one thing. Saran's eyes narrowed. And what's that, Captain? Jace leaned forward, voice cutting through the room like a blade. They think outnumbering us wins wars. It doesn't. It just means more targets. The room stirred. Some scoffed, but most felt the spark. Mara smirked faintly, knowing where this was heading. They told me I was outnumbered on Kestral Station. Jace continued, his voice gaining fire. They were right. And yet, by the time we pulled out, half their forces were ash. You know why? He slammed a fist on the table, startling even the Admiral. Because numbers don't mean anything when one side refuses to die. Humanity doesn't fight for territory or conquest. We fight because extinction is the only alternative. And extinction isn't an option. The words rippled through the room, transforming fear into focus. Officers who had moments ago been studying casualty charts now straightened, eyes locked on Jace. Admiral Saran studied him for a long moment. Inspiring speeches won't change the mathematics, Captain. No, Jace agreed. But they change soldiers. And soldiers change wars. The meeting adjourned, but the weight of the exchange lingered. As Jace stepped out into the corridor, Mara caught up with him. You had them, she said quietly. Even Saran. For a moment, he actually believed. He'll need more than belief, Jace muttered. His gaze drifted to the stars through the viewport, an ocean filled with unseen enemies. They'll come for Earth soon. And when they do, every soldier, every civilian, every child will need to remember that outnumbered doesn't mean defeated. That night, reports streamed in from across the front. Colonies falling. Fleets scattered. Resistance crushed. Humanity was bleeding from 100 wounds. But one transmission cut through the despair. A scout patrol, trapped on an asteroid outpost, sent a final message before being overwhelmed. We are surrounded. They outnumber us 1,000 to 1. Tell the captain, we said the same thing back to them. Static swallowed the rest, but the implication was clear. Even in their last breath, the scouts had turned the Dominion's words into defiance. Jace replayed the message in silence, the corner of his mouth twitching into something halfway between grief and pride. The Dominion Council, meanwhile, convened in orbit above a captured colony. Alien warlords hissed and barked in frustration as reports detailed the stubborn human resistance. Losses were acceptable, but morale was faltering. One commander sneered. "They are a primitive species. Why do they not break?" Another replied coldly. "Because they do not understand fear in the way we do. They cling to survival like it is religion." The first bared its fangs. "Then we must show them hopelessness. We drown them in numbers until they cannot breathe." They all agreed. None of them noticed the irony. Every plan they made revolved around numbers. None accounted for humanity's refusal to submit. Back aboard the Resolute, Jace stood before his unit. The survivors of Kestral Station, fewer than 50 now, lined the hangar. Their armor was battered, their faces drawn, but their eyes were alive. He addressed them not as a commander, but as one of them. "They say we're outnumbered. They're right. Everywhere we turn, there are more of them and fewer of us. But that's their mistake. They think numbers decide battles. They think survival is a calculation. They've never met a human cornered with nothing left but rage and will. That's where we're strongest." He paused, letting the words settle. "On Kestral, they told me I was outnumbered. I told them the truth, so are you, because every time they bring more soldiers, we bring more fury. Every time they think they've won, they've only fed the fire. And fire spreads." The unit roared, slamming fists against armor. The sound echoed through the hangar like thunder. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, Jace finally let the mask slip. The weight of command pressed on him. He replayed the faces of the dead, heard the screams, felt the shrapnel still lodged in his leg. He wasn't invincible. None of them were. But that wasn't the point. Humanity's strength wasn't perfection or superiority. It was the refusal to surrender when surrender made sense. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, as much a vow as a reminder. "Outnumbered means nothing. We'll show them." Cliffhanger ending asterisk. Alarms blared across the Resolute. The ship shuddered as enemy signatures appeared on sensors, an entire Dominion fleet dropping from warp directly into Earth's defense perimeter. Mara burst into Jace's quarters, eyes wide. "They're here. The invasion has begun." Jace rose slowly, strapping on his armor, his face hardening into the mask of war once more. "Good," he said, voice like steel. "Let them count. We'll show them what numbers are worth." The Dominion fleet spread across Earth's orbit like a black tide, blotting out constellations with jagged silhouettes of warships. The Resolute shook violently as the first volleys lit up the void, plasma storms slamming against defense grids, detonations cascading like false dawns over the planet's curve. Captain Jace Korr braced himself against the command console, his legs screaming with pain as the vibrations rattled through him. He refused to sit. The crew needed to see him upright, unflinching, even as the stars themselves seemed to fall. "Status!" he barked. Lieutenant Mara Aaron's voice cut through the chaos. "Orbital platforms Alpha through Gamma destroyed. Civilian transport scrambling, but Dominion frigates are intercepting. If they break the defense net..." "They won't," Jace snapped, eyes fixed on the tactical map. Red blips swarmed like locusts around a fragile web of blue. Admiral Saran's voice thundered over comms from Central Command. "All units, defensive posture only. Buy time for evacuation. Do not engage recklessly." Jace's jaw tightened. Defensive posture. Another way of saying bleed slowly. He turned to his crew. "We're not here to hold. We're here to break them. Prep strike wings. Target their command relays." Mara frowned. "That's against orders." "So is surrender," Jace replied coldly. Moments later, the Resolute dove into the swarm. Its hull rattled as Dominion fire raked across plating, but its strike wings streaked into the chaos. Dozens of human fighters cut through alien lines, weaving impossible paths. The Dominion outnumbered them 30-1. Yet the humans didn't fight like prey. They hit and vanished, reappearing in blind spots, detonating frigates with surgical precision. Where numbers should have overwhelmed, Defiance carved holes. Reports crackled in. "Relay ship Beta destroyed. Frigate cluster collapsing on our flank. For a heartbeat, the impossible happened, the swarm faltered. On the Dominion flagship, the warlord Tyrak watched with narrowed eyes. His clawed fingers dug into the railing as human fighters ripped apart another relay ship. Impossible, he hissed. Their formations are fractured. They should be collapsing. An adjutant chittered nervously. They fight with chaos. Illogical, wasteful, unsustainable. Tyrak's gaze burned on the screen, where a human fighter, already aflame, dove headlong into a cruiser's weak point, erupting into an explosion that shattered half the ship. Not unsustainable, Tyrak growled. Suicidal. And yet they win. Back aboard the Resolute, Jace's strike pushed deeper. But Dominion reinforcements closed in. A cluster of heavy cruisers moved to encircle, weapons glowing. Mara's voice was tight. They're cutting us off. Jace's eyes scanned the grid, then settled on a derelict station orbiting just beyond the battle. An idea, insane and perfect, sparked. Divert course to Station 7 Kappa. Mara blinked. That thing's abandoned. No weapons, no power. Not power. Massachusetts. Jace's eyes blazed. We drag the Dominion into its gravity well, then light the engines. Turn a corpse into a hammer. The crew hesitated only a second. Then Mara grinned fiercely. Aye, Captain. The Resolute veered sharply, Dominion ships in pursuit. Through the viewport, the hulking wreck of Station 7 Kappa loomed, silent and skeletal. Jace's hands tightened on the console. Bring us in close. Prep autopilot. Then set every engine to overload. A hush fell as the crew realized what he meant. You're turning the station into a bomb, Mara said quietly. Jace didn't answer. He didn't need to. The trap snapped shut. As the Resolute skimmed the station's edge, Dominion cruisers poured in after them. Plasma fire tore across the station's frame, sparks cascading into the void. Now! Jace roared. Engines flared. The dead station, ignited with stolen fuel cells, blazed to life for the first time in decades. Momentum carried it forward, straight into the heart of the Dominion formation. The explosion was cataclysmic. A sun bloomed in orbit, shockwaves ripping through enemy lines. Entire cruisers disintegrated. Frigates spun into debris. The swarm fractured, reeling back in chaos. Cheers erupted on the Resolute. Mara slammed a fist against the console. By God, you did it! Jace exhaled slowly, gripping the railing to stay upright. Not God, he murmured. Just humanity refusing to die. But victory was a blade with two edges. As debris scattered, sensors flared again, new ships dropping from warp. Dozens more. Mara's face hardened. That wasn't their fleet. That was the first wave. Jace's chest ached, but his voice remained steady. Then we do it again. As many times as it takes. On the ground below, civilians huddled in bunkers heard the echoes of explosions streaking across the sky. Fear turned to awe as word spread. Humans had struck back, annihilating ships that should have been untouchable. Whispers became shouts. We're outnumbered, but so are they. The phrase spread like wildfire, painted on bunker walls, whispered in evacuation lines, carried across comm channels. Soldiers repeated it before charging into hopeless fights. Pilots muttered it in cracked cockpits. It became a vow, a creed. Hours later, in the command center, Admiral Saran appeared on holofeed, his face grave but alive with something new, respect. Captain Korr, he said slowly, your defiance has lit a fire across every front. Colonies that were retreating are standing again. The Dominion expected despair. You've given them fury. Jace inclined his head, but his voice was sharp. Then don't waste it. Stop counting losses. Start making them count their dead instead. Saran gave the faintest of smiles. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps numbers don't win wars. Will does. That night, the Resolute drifted in battered silence. Casualties were heavy, systems fried, and ammunition dwindling. But morale burned brighter than it had in months. Jace sat alone in his quarters, listening to faint echoes of laughter and chatter from the mess deck. For the first time, his soldiers believed they could win. Mara entered quietly. Her armor was stripped, her face streaked with grime. She studied him for a moment, then said softly, "You know you're becoming more than a captain, right? They look at you, and they see proof." Jace's eyes closed briefly. He remembered the screams on Kestral Station, the scout's final message, the faces of every soldier who had burned to buy time. "I'm not proof," he said finally. "I'm just the one still standing." "Sometimes," Mara replied. "That's all proof needs to be." Cliffhanger ending asterisk. The comms flared suddenly, breaking the quiet. A panicked officer's voice cut through. "Captain, new contact. Massive. Bigger than anything we've seen. It's not a fleet. It's a single ship." Jace's head lifted slowly, eyes narrowing. Mara whispered, "What could be bigger than a fleet?" Jace rose, pain forgotten, his voice grim. "Their executioner." The stars outside shifted as something vast blotted them out. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The executioner's ship arrived like a continent carved from shadow, sliding into orbit with such enormity it eclipsed half the sky. Its hull pulsed with eerie green light, organic veins glowing as if the vessel itself were alive. Smaller Dominion ships scattered away from it, unwilling to drift too close to their own weapon of annihilation. On the Resolute, silence reigned as every eye locked on the monster filling the viewport. It wasn't just a warship. It was designed to be a statement. This is how civilizations end. Captain Jace Korr stood rigid, leg aching, ribs still bound, yet his voice cut through the silence. "That's not a ship. That's execution dressed as steel." Lieutenant Mara Aaron's hands clenched on the console. "Sensors can't even read its size. It's bigger than cities. How do we fight that?" Jace's gaze didn't waver. "We don't match its size. We find the weakness inside its arrogance." Minutes later, the executioner fired. A lance of energy slashed across the planet's atmosphere, ripping an entire defense grid to ash in one strike. Earth's night side lit up like dawn, cities trembling as power failed across continents. Admiral Saran's voice crackled over the comms, steady but hollow. "All units fall back. Prioritize civilian evacuation. We cannot engage this thing." Jace slammed his fist on the console. "Fall back and it burns the planet piece by piece. That's not survival, it's slaughter." Saran hesitated. "And your alternative?" Jace's eyes narrowed. "We go inside." The war room fell into stunned silence. Mara blinked, certain she'd misheard. "Inside?" Jace leaned over the holographic display. "That thing isn't invincible. No weapon is. Its core must be centralized, its systems vulnerable if disrupted. If we board it, sabotage from within, we can cripple it before it rips Earth apart." Saran's voice came back, cold. "That's suicide." "Maybe," Jace said, unflinching. "But so is waiting. The difference is suicide buys us nothing. Fighting buys humanity a chance." The Resolute limped toward the executioner under a hail of fire. Escorts formed a desperate screen, human ships throwing themselves into the path of Dominion blasts to clear a corridor. The Resolute pierced a monstrous hangar bay, scraping across organic plating before crashing into a landing. "Breaching teams, move!" Jace shouted. Dozens of soldiers poured out, weapons raised. The air inside was thick, humid, stinking of rot. Pulsing walls flexed with each step, alive in ways that felt wrong. Mara muttered, "Feels like we're walking through a throat." "Then let's make it choke," Jace growled. The Mirakide defenders struck immediately. Armor giants erupted from the shadows, claws glistening, plasma rifles spitting fire. The hangar became a slaughterhouse. Jace fought at the front, blade flashing, rifle roaring. Pain ripped through his side, but he pressed forward, every strike fueled by defiance. Mara covered him, precise shots dropping attackers before they could flank. "Forward!" Jace bellowed. "Every step we take is another they'll regret." Bit by bit, The humans carved a path into the ship's depths. The corridors writhed as if alive. Veins along the walls pulsed with energy, lighting the way in sickly hues. Engineers planted charges on conduits, detonating behind them to slow pursuit. The deeper they went, the heavier the resistance became. At the central chamber, they found it, the heart of the beast. A crystalline core, larger than the Resolute itself, pulsed with blinding waves of green energy. Cables fed into it like arteries, each one humming with power. Mara's breath caught. That is what killed Marrow Bay in one shot. Jace's jaw tightened. Then we stop its heartbeat. The squad split, planting charges around the core. But as they worked, the chamber shook. From the far side, a towering figure emerged, Dominion warlord Tyrak himself. His armor gleamed like obsidian, his voice a guttural growl. Pathetic humans, he hissed. You cannot comprehend the scale of what stands before you. Outnumbered 1,000 to 1, and yet you crawl into your own graves. Jace stepped forward, raising his blade, blood still seeping beneath his armor. His voice was calm, razor sharp. You're right. I am outnumbered. But so are you. The chamber erupted. Tyrak struck first, his blade crashing down with monstrous force. Jace caught the blow, knees buckling, sparks flying as metal screamed. Mara opened fire, but Tyrak's armor absorbed it like rain. The warlord backhanded Jace across the chamber, armor denting as he slammed against the wall. Rising with a grunt, Jace spat blood and charged again. You think numbers win? Wrong, warlord. It's will that wins, and ours is endless. The duel raged. Blades clashed, plasma seared, walls cracked under the force. Soldiers on both sides clashed in chaos around them, but all eyes kept snapping to the center where human captain and alien warlord clashed like titans. Finally, Tyrak drove his blade through Jace's side, pinning him to the floor. Pain roared through him, but his eyes never dimmed. He grabbed the warlord's arm, pulling him close, and whispered through gritted teeth. You forgot something. Humans don't need all their parts to fight. With his free hand, Jace drove his own blade up beneath Tyrak's armor, piercing through to the warlord's chest. Tyrak staggered, choking on disbelief, before collapsing in a heap. Jace sagged, blood pouring freely. Mara caught him, dragging him back toward the detonators. Captain? Stay with me! His grip tightened weakly on her wrist. Finish it. Don't let me die for nothing. The last charge is armed. The squad fell back, dragging the wounded. Mara lingered, eyes locked on Jace as the core pulsed brighter, unstable. He met her gaze, managed the faintest grin. Tell them, numbers never mattered. She swallowed hard, tears streaking her face, then ran as alarmed screamed. The explosion was apocalyptic. The crystalline core fractured, shockwaves tearing through the executioner's body. Green fire erupted along its veins, consuming everything. From orbit, Earth watched as the monstrous silhouette split apart, fragments burning like meteors across the sky. On the Resolute, survivors cheered through tears. Against all odds, the executioner had fallen. Humanity had not just survived, they had struck down the symbol of their extinction. Later, in the battered command deck, Admiral Saran addressed the survivors across every channel. His voice was steady, reverent. Today, the Dominion sent their executioner to end humanity. Instead, humanity ended it. Captain Jace Korr gave his life to show us what defiance looks like. And now, his words will guide us. Outnumbered doesn't mean defeated. It means they still haven't counted what truly matters. Across Earth and its colonies, civilians and soldiers alike repeated it. So are you. Mara stood at the viewport, arm in a sling, watching the debris field drift in orbit. Her chest ached with grief, but fire burned beneath it. She whispered to the stars. You're gone, Jace. But your storm remains. And across the galaxy, the Dominion felt it, the crack in their empire, born not from numbers, but from one human who refused to bow.